the Chelmsford Corn Exchange. The idea of this building was born out of a problem that had existed for a long time, in that the local farmers could not trade their corn in ideal light conditions and therefore not obtain the best prices. The concept behind the construction of this iconic building goes back to 1855, when the trustees of the Chelmsford Corn Exchange Company were looking for a new site to construct a building for this purpose. On the west side of Tyndall Square once stood Wallinger's, an old building that had been in the family since the late 14th century. Given the opportunity, the company purchased this building and immediately had it pulled down. Frederick Chancellor, a new up-and-coming architect, was then awarded the contract to design this new building, which had a neoclassical brick facade front with an ornamental balcony and parapet above. Behind the front was an airy interior, well lit by natural light, with a high arch glass roof, supported by massive cast iron girders. The first stone was laid on 24th June 1856, and over the space of just 12 months, the building was constructed by Mr. Simpson's Building Company. The important ironwork was supplied from the local works of Messrs. Wood and Son. According to the Essex Standard newspaper, the opening of the new building on Friday, 5th June 1857, was celebrated with a public dinner attended by 150 people, mostly the great and the good of Chelmsford. The chairman of the board of directors was Mr. Edmund Round Esquire, who led the after-dinner speeches, of which there were many. They all congratulated Fred Chancellor in his design of such a wonderful, fine building. They all admired the taste and elegance with which he had displayed, and gave him credit in producing the most handsomest building of the kind in the county. Although the opening dinner was a grand affair, it was very much kept on time and finished promptly at 8 p.m. The following Friday, being a market day, the new building was for the first time used for its intended function. There were stands set up inside, and farmers and dealers were seen with tall hats on the trading floor for the first time. The old Corn Exchange in Shire Hall was open for business as usual, but on that day it appears that everybody preferred to use the new building with its superior conditions. The new Corn Exchange fulfilled its main purpose well, and soon took on the additional role of the administration centre for the town's market. When the building was not being used for trading and administration, the large space was rented out as a public hall. One of the first official events to be held in the hall in 1888 was the inauguration of the Borough of Chelmsford, with the new charter carried in triumph from the railway station to the Corn Exchange, where a large public dinner took place. Another event that happened in November 1908 was the suffragettes Sylvia Pankhurst, Flora Drummond and Helen Ogston visited Chelmsford and gave speeches at a meeting in the Corn Exchange. It was not long, however, before the crowd outside became rowdy, with hecklers accosting the women. For their own safety they took refuge in the Bell Hotel next door. However, they were really pleased that their voices had been heard in Chelmsford. Over the following years, the building housed a number of events, which included exhibitions by the Chelmsford Star Co-op, and on some occasions the building was also used as a roller skating rink. The big employers in Chelmsford like Crompton's and Marconi's also hired the building in December for their staff company Christmas celebrations. In the 1950s, when the trading of corn was almost at an end, and with a new owner, this big venue was then used for anything from flower festivals to wrestling matches. By the early 1960s, the building had found another use as a music venue, known then as the Saturday Scene. This was the opportunity for the young people of Chelmsford to be able to experience performances from such famous bands as The Who, The Small Faces, Pink Floyd, and of course Jimi Hendrix. His first ever music video was filmed in the Corn Exchange on the edge of Tyndall Square in Chelmsford. All this fun, however, soon came to an end in 1969, when the building, then in a poor state of repair, was pulled down.
It was probably a bit further forward than where they put the exchange building there, the Corn Exchange. It's all moved around thanks to the road changes, but it would have been further forward, I think. there were 3 steps, I think, leading up to it. But it was easily as broad as that brown section further. There were, I think, folding doors, at least double doors at the front where people went in. Then there was a foyer where you could buy tickets, and then beside that there was another inner door where you could get in by showing your ticket, and they'd also put a mark on your hand which was translucent and showed up in the dark. We found a quick way of getting into nothing because of that. Maybe I shouldn't say this, they might still be up there. A fella discovered that if you put soap powder, the brightener in that, with water, that would show up. So you get one person to go in, get the sign, and then we'd all copy it. And then you'd go. It was certainly very deep. The Chancellor Hall was put there to replace it, but I think it was, could have been almost twice the size, the capacity, as the Chancellor Hall. And there were side doors there, which would have a couple of bouncers, as well as the ones that would take in your tickets, which came in handy the night of the Pink Floyd, because everybody still wanted Gino Washington down here, and they weren't ready for the Pink Floyd. So the bouncers were actually letting people in through the side door, which was the fire escape, to make it look like there were more people in there, but they didn't obviously pay the group's requirements that day. I think there was a gallery upstairs, but it was never anything to do with it. There was the stage at the far end, and there was, beside the stage, there was toilets and dressing rooms, none of which the public would have seen, which again, the night Jimi Hendrix played, it was quite an important part, because he knew about groupies and he didn't want to get caught on the way out. So the way his act ended was that he left his guitar. The lights went out, he put his guitar down with the strings down, so there was all feedback. Drummer and bassist carried on, and he did a bunk through the doors and was gone when the lights came back on, so it's quite smart in that respect.
Iris says, "It was a big part of my life. Earliest memory is of Americans dancing with the local girls back in the 50s. I used to peep round the doors on a hot summer's night and was fascinated to see them jiving to the rock and roll music. Then came the roller skating days when we queued to get the skates that felt the most comfortable. Then for me the best days of Fernando's rock and roll Saturdays in the 50s, early 60s, when all the top groups came. Fabulous times, I cannot remember any trouble." Peter remembers one all-night jazz session about 1960. Chris Barber, Terry Lightfoot and a couple more bands. Friday night until breakfast Saturday morning. Exhausting, but we were young then, so saw my girlfriend home and then into work. The only other person I know that went is now in Australia.
I'm Elizabeth Woodcraft, and in 1965, 1966, my friend Christine and I used to go to the Corn Exchange in Chelmsford every Saturday. We'd go into town, catch the bus, go into town, and in the centre of town there we were, walk up the steps and in we'd go. We'd always be early before the group started to play, because we had to go home so early. We had to be home on the last bus, which went at 11 o'clock. So it wasn't too bad, because in fact at the beginning, before the groups arrived, they'd play all these wonderful soul records that were just coming over from the States, all the records that the mods really liked. Green Onions by Booker T and the MGs, the Harlem Shuffle, Papa's Got a Brand New Bag. Even now, you've only got to listen to the first few notes of those and you're taken right back to that great cavernous hall with its dusty wooden floorboards. And you'd get the stamp on your hand and you'd walk across the hall, probably in time to the music. And then you'd hand over your coat at the ladies' toilets and you get a raffle ticket in exchange and hope you get your coat back, because it would be, this was your suede coat. Mine was suede, Christine's was leather, mod coats. And then you'd wait for the groups to appear. And we had some great groups, The Who, The Animals, Georgie Fame, The Steam Packet with Rod Stewart. I mean, you name it, we had it. And we also had American bands, Goldie and the Gingerbreads. I remember they wore really unattractive mauve pantsuits. And there was Wilson Pickett. And Wilson Pickett, that was a very sad story.
My name is Barry, and I remember during the Who's performance, a girl jumped on stage and grabbed Roger Daltrey's neck chain. He shouted, "Please don't rip it off, my mum bought it for me." Stephen says, remember the Who smashing their equipment in the late 60s and Jimi Hendrix and the Animals. I was just a tad too young and skint to go in on a Saturday night, but used to stand outside and look through at the stage after 9 p.m. They opened the big doors when it was a full house and we got free viewings. I also remember the biannual Bird and Budgerigar show as my dad won heaps of ribbons and cups.
Yeah, well, with Hendrix, we got a notion as to do something special. Clapton had always been the hero up until then, and he said when he first saw him that he thought he might as well give up. And obviously, visually he was different because he was wearing kind of more psychedelia era clothes. And then, of course, when the guitar started, you realised that you never heard anything like it before, not even from Clapton and Peter Green.
I saw Georgie Fame, Alan Price, Johnny Kidd and the Pirates and many more back in the early 60s, a great Saturday night out. Picked up by my dad outside Shire Hall. Attendance depended on who was appearing.
Greg says, Spotted Dog, The Dolphin, Corn Exchange, in that order, and the other direction in the interval. Names are endless. Jimmy H. The Best Night of All, also Gino, Pink Floyd, Pete Green's Fleetwood Mac, Carl Douglas, Cream, The Who, Rod Stewart, Steam Packet, Bo Diddley, plus many I've forgotten.
Yeah, well, they didn't have a bar in the Corn Exchange, so all the locals on a Saturday night had to go to the local pubs. And we're in Tyndall Street here, which had 3 that I think were functioning then. Certainly the White Hart was up there, and 2 more down here, the Spotted Dog and the Dolphin. There had been others at various times in history, but those are the ones that were functioning in those days. Or people would go up to the Golden Fleece, and even the Saracen's Head over there.
Colin says, roller skating every Monday night, wrestling on Tuesdays followed by roller hockey on Sunday morning. Drinks in the Golden Lion after a hard morning skating.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned Pink Floyd and Jimi Hendrix, but that wasn't the general run of the music. It was the mod era, and most of it was Tamla Motown and soul by lots of people that became famous artists within the next 10 years, the likes of Rod Stewart and Bowie played here once but got ill and had to go to hospital. I could go on with loads of them, but that was the general gist of it. The mod music was Tamla or soul. And Hendrix and Floyd were coming towards the end of the lifespan of the Corn Exchange, as most of us knew it.
Hazel remembers the Hollies and sitting at the edge of the stage chatting to Graham Nash. He was really nice. This was a time when even the very top groups were easily accessible. I worked for a time in a newsagent's in Tyndall Street and Dave Berry came in to buy some lemonade. He was also very chatty and a nice man. I found Georgie Fame to be more offhand as he told one fan to move away from him.
There were some tricky times as well at the Corn Exchange. The Yardbirds, for instance, they came, it was all very exciting, and I bought my ticket and I was ready to go. It was quite expensive, 7 and 6 or 8 and 6 or something. And then I did something in the week and my mum wouldn't let me go. There was also the story of Wilson Pickett. And the thing about Wilson Pickett was his hit song was Midnight Hour. The first line, I'm going to wait till the midnight hour. And that's what we almost had to do. And the terrible thing was, of course, we had to catch the last bus home, 11 o'clock. And it was getting closer and closer. It was getting 10:30. Should we go and pick up our coats? 20 to 11. And still no sign. And they were saying, yeah, he's coming, he's coming. And in the end, we decided we'd go mad. We'd miss the last bus. And he did come on, I think, about 11 o'clock. And we heard him for about 5 minutes. And then we had to run all the way home. Anyway, it was all great fun, and we had such a good time. The clothes, the music, the groups, it was just good fun, and it was so much fun that I wrote a book about it. I wrote a book called The Saturday Girls, which is based around 2 mod girls called Sandra and Linda, who live in Chelmsford and who go to the Corn Exchange, and I really wanted to talk about that time because it was a good time, and I suppose it was a sort of an innocent time, wasn't it? But I just remember, the scooters, because the thrill would be if you, instead of having to catch the bus home, you could get a ride on the back of somebody's scooter. That would be a win-win situation.
Marianne says way back before all these sessions, Chelmsford Music Festival for Schools competition singing in 1949, with the composer Herbert Howells as the judge.